Welcome to the 76 Capital Leadership Series, and I'm your host, Wayne Kimmel. Really excited to have you here and have a great guest today in Leigh Steinberg, the NFL super agent. And CEO of Steinberg Sports and Entertainment. Many of you know Leigh, who's worked with Troy Aikman and Steve Young and Warren Moon and Howie Long and Bruce Smith. The list goes on. He actually, has been involved with 47 NFL drafts. Coming up, this will be his 47th NFL draft. Incredible how many years and how many, he has 8 first-round picks. First picks of the first round. Incredible what he's been able to do. And just really excited to have him on our show today and talk about the NFL, talk about how he works with his players and the kinds of relationships that he's built over the years and how he works with people and truly wants to make the world a better place. And you can find Leigh on Twitter at Leigh Steinberg, as well as on at Steinberg Sports for all the things that are going on with Steinberg Sports, including his partner over there, Chris Cabot, who we've also had on our 76 Capital Leadership Series. So excited about that. And as many of you know, the 76 Capital Leadership Series is all about bringing together leaders in the sports industry, entrepreneurs, as well as investors and others who are all about thinking about what's next within the sports industry. And that's what we're all about at 76 Capital, investing in those entrepreneurs that are passionate, that are smart, that are nice, who want to do the next thing in sports. And we want to meet you and we want to talk with you. And that's why we do these types of events and these types of shows. So if you want to reach out to us on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, we're at 76 Capital across the internet. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel for our shows, as well as going to and subscribing to our podcasts, whether that's on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or really pretty much anywhere you can find a podcast. Please do that. And you can find me at Wayne Kimmel all across the internet as well at 76 Capital. So at this point, I'm really excited to bring on our special guest for our 76 Capital Leadership Series, Leigh Steinberg. Leigh, welcome to our show.
Thank you. Pleasure to be with you.
It's really great to have you. And, it's amazing, the career that you've had as an agent, not only just in the NFL, but what you've done across all different types of sports entertainment and the types of people that you've worked with, whether it was Troy Aikman or Steve Young or Warren Moon or Howie Long or Bruce Smith. It's just amazing to have the kinds of NFL Hall of Famers and others that you worked with. And one of the things that we love to do on our 76 Capital Leadership shows is really kind of go back in time, and sort of tell the story of how you got here. So I'd love to hear your story, where you grew up, and did you always want to be an agent?
There really wasn't an organized field of agentry when I started. As a matter of fact, teams could slam the phone down and say, "We don't deal with agents." So there was no guaranteed right. So there was no field to aspire to. I grew up in Los Angeles, went undergrad to Berkeley. I was there in the late 60s. I was student body president when Ronald Reagan was governor of California. And every time we demonstrated against the war, he cracked down. And I learned everything I would later need to know about negotiating from dealing with Governor, then President Reagan. And when I was in law school, I was a dorm counselor in an undergraduate dorm. They moved the freshman football team into the dorm, and one of the students was the quarterback, Steve Bartkowski. It was quite a dorm. We also had a little bearded guy named Steve. Steve Wozniak lived there, and he went down, he went down to San Jose and put together a tiny little company. And we had a fellow named Brian Maxwell who started Power Bar. But Bartkowski gets drafted number 1 overall in the 1975 draft. And I'm out of law school a year, traveling, not ready to work. And he asked me to represent him. There I was, brimming with legal experience, never having practiced law before. And the World Football League was competing against the NFL back then, and we got the largest rookie contract in NFL history. So we flew into Atlanta the night before the signing. And when we get to the airport, there are Klieg lights flashing in the sky like for a movie premiere. A huge crowd's pressed up against the police line. And the first thing we hear is, we interrupt the evening news to bring you a special news bulletin. Steve Bartkowski and his attorney have just arrived at the Atlanta airport. We switch you live. Well, I looked at him and I knew we weren't in Berkeley anymore. And my dad had two core values. One was treasure relationships, especially family. And second was to try to make a meaningful difference in the world, make a positive impact, and help people who couldn't help themselves. And I saw that athletes were the celebrities. Athletes were the movie stars in communities across the country. And I thought that if they would go back and retrace their roots back to the high school community, where they could set up a scholarship fund at the high school or church or Boys and Girls Club, put down roots, and then move to the collegiate community and find a way to bond with the alums through a scholarship program or a retrofit of a weight room, and then to the pro city, where they would set up a charitable foundation that would encompass the leading business figures, political figures, and community leaders, and execute a program where the athlete can tackle something. And an example would be Work Done, who just put the 181st single mother and their family into the first home they'll ever own by making the down payment and outfitting it. So it's athletes changing lives, and it's together what we can do in sports to make a difference.
Yeah, it's absolutely incredible, and I love your what your dad talked to you about, treasuring relationships and making this, being in a position to make this world a better place, which is really ties into the overall philosophy that we have here at 76 Capital about working with passionate and smart and nice entrepreneurs who want to change the world. And I love that. And I'm so excited to have you, Leigh, on our 76 Capital Leadership Series and, talking about your career as a sports agent. And I was gonna say NFL agent, but again, you've really spanned more than just the NFL.
Well, I had a big baseball practice with 60 players like Manny Ramirez and Pudge Rodriguez and Will Clark and Sean Green, CC Sabathia. We had a basketball practice with a number of lottery picks, represented boxers like Lennox Lewis and Oscar De La Hoya, U.S. team in the World Cup. And that's one side of our practice, but the other side of our practice is very entrepreneurial. It's coming up with some new solution to a difficulty in sports, or some new app or some new creative way to build a company. So years ago, we came up with the concept of Athlete Direct, which would put athletes on the internet for the very first time. This is back in the late 90s, and you still had to go AOL. So I thought that if we went out and signed Michael Jordan, big basketball player, Ken Griffey Jr., baseball, and the quarterbacks, and for the very first time, you could read their weekly diaries, you could look at their charitable foundations, and you could buy directly with an e-commerce application. So we set that up as a little startup, and then eventually sold our share for a ridiculous multiple to venture capitalists, and have created a number of other businesses. So we're looking at concussion. Can we do a new helmet? Can we find a nutraceutical or pharmaceutical? We're looking at, I've got the concept of a new app. So keeping millennials in the ballpark is very hard, because if you're used to multitasking all the time, how are you going to sit for 3.5 hours at a football game that has 28 minutes of actual action? So it's an app where down one side runs your fantasy stats, down the other side runs your gambling bets. Underneath, you can text, so you can talk smack to people in or out of the stadium. We let the fans vote on one play call a game that the coach has to call. We let them vote on one referee overturn where you can take that really bad call and do something. And then when you touch it, you can order from the snack bar. When you touch the screen, you get a whole series of content. So being entrepreneurial is part of what we do. It's trying to create new modalities. In boxing, what I did with Lennox Lewis and Oscar De La Hoya was to say, look, you don't need to pay 40% to a promoter. They set up chairs. You can get your own venue. You can get your own ranking and affiliation. And so Lennox set up Lion Productions, where he became the promoter, and Oscar did Golden Boy Productions. So it's the concept of the athlete as owner. And 3 of our football players have become minority owners of actual NFL teams. So Warwick Dunn owns part of the Atlanta Falcons, and you probably saw Patrick Mahomes just bought part of the Kansas City Chiefs. So the concept for this generation of athletes is they can be the owner, they can be the head of the hedge fund, they can be the person in charge, whether it's media or the rest of it.
I love the idea what you're saying, and it's also something that we really believe in. Also, the fact that not only do today's athletes, and even in the past, have a lot of social capital, but they also have the financial capital, but now they have the social capital and how they can really move things forward. And I definitely want to get into your story around Patrick Mahomes, but before we get to that, I gotta ask you about the question about the picture right above your head. If you could tell us a little bit about the backstory of how you and the whole Jerry Maguire story. How did that all come about?
Well, I've been involved in a series of movies. The picture above my head is a scene from Ocean's 11. And my friend Jerry Weintraub wanted Lennox Lewis to be in the fight scene. So originally he said, we want you to fight Mike Tyson in that movie before the lights go out. And Lennox said, are you kidding? He'll bite my ear off. So we didn't do him. We did Klitschko, but I played a reporter in that scene. In 1993, Cameron Crowe, and that's Julia Roberts. 1993, Cameron Crowe, writer-director, called me and said, I want to follow you around to do a film which would have as its lead character a sports agent. So he went to the 1993 draft where Drew Bledsoe was the first pick and my client. He went to Pro Scouting Day where I marched around free agents. He went to league meetings in Palm Desert where I had actual free agents and I was interacting with teams and trying to get the players signed. He came to games. He came to the Super Bowl. He sat in my office. And I told him stories, lots and lots of stories. So then I was technical advisor, so I vetted the script to make sure the willing suspension of disbelief that holds you in a motion picture so you're not feeling like it's phony dialogue or phony set did not get broken. And then he assigned me the actors like Cuba Gooding Jr., who I took down to the Super Bowl. And for a week, he had to pretend he was my client. And so he hung out with Desmond Howard and Amani Toomer. So I actually had to show the quarterback in the film, Jerry O'Connell, who played Cush, had to throw a spiral because he had gone to NYU and they didn't have football there. So, and I've never been able to walk outside to have dinner or through an airport where someone didn't run up to me 21 years later and either want me to say or say those 4 words that start with "show me." Then I did a film called Any Given Sunday, where I was technical advisor with Oliver Stone. And that one I worked with Al Pacino, who played the coach, and I worked with Cameron Diaz, who played the owner, and again vetted the script. And I did a baseball movie called For the Love of the Game with Kevin Costner, and we've got more on slate.
Well, it's super exciting to have you. Again, having Leigh Steinberg, super agent on our 76 Capital Leadership Series, all these amazing stories from football to baseball to boxing to the movies. And now, you have this amazing talent in Patrick Mahomes as one of your clients who, you're able to, help him sign the biggest contract in all of the NFL and in sports, right? I mean, it's just unbelievable what you've been able to do with him, and as you see Chris Cabot, your partner as well in this picture. I mean, what was that? What is it like to, what's the whole process of going out and signing someone like a Patrick Mahomes and, getting him from while he's still in college with his family? What is that whole process like,
right,
getting to now where he is today?
So we try to profile potential clients by seeing if they have the requisite character. Do they want to be a role model? Do they have great work habits? Are they ambitious? Do they want to do things off the field as well as on the field? So you look for that type of person and that type of player, because with our concept of role modeling, we need players that have a good heart and are enthusiastic about it. And generally the meetings are first with the parents. And it happened that Patrick's father was a former baseball player, had pitched for like 10 years in the majors. And we met with he and the mom, Randy, and Chris and I did the meetings. And we met with them a series of times before we ever met Patrick. And you could tell there was a values match, that they wanted their son to be a role model. They wanted him to be focused and make an impact. So, Chris and I knew that Patrick was gifted. You wouldn't have thought that he would do it this early in his career, but because he's played 2 years of football, right? In his first year, he was MVP. In the second year, he led a team to the Super Bowl. So you would have, but you could see that he's preternaturally mature. He's grounded. So if you like him on the field, you love him off the field.
It's really special. And, when you look at someone like Patrick and comparing him or just today's athlete to the athletes of the past and some of the greats that you've worked with, what's the difference between today's athlete and athletes, several decades ago?
Well, they're millennials or Gen X or whatever the right term is. So remember, they've grown up on big screen TV. They've grown up on computers and cell phones and TikTok and Snapchat and multiple stimulus coming in at every time. So I would tell you, without insulting them, that their attention span is a little bit shorter. Okay. And they're more visually oriented. But you still find people with great hearts that can focus. But a coach has to get it out quickly. The times of expecting someone to sit for 2 hours and listen to your pitch are gone.
Yeah, and well, maybe are there certain players? We talked earlier about some of the great quarterbacks that you've had. Thinking back to a Steve Young or a Warren Moon or a Troy Aikman, how do you see Patrick in that world?
Ultimately, the test of a franchise quarterback is, can you build the team around him for 10 to 12 years and maybe longer? Can you win because of him rather than with? But ultimately, it's, what does this player do in adversity? He's thrown a couple interceptions. The crowd is booing. The center's looking at him like he's on hallucinogens. The game's getting out of hand. What does he do now? Can he compartmentalize, adopt a quiet mind, tune out extraneous stimuli, and elevate his level of play to take a team to and through the Super Bowl? So Troy Aikman would have games where he was 17 for 22. They didn't. Emmitt Smith would run the ball. for 205 yards. But he took his team to 3 Super Bowls. And Patrick already at this young age has shown he can do that. I think of him as a generational player. Every so often an athlete comes along, Tiger Woods, before Muhammad Ali, LeBron James, that sort of can define an era. And that's Patrick. I mean, he has to obviously continue what he started, but if this is what he is after 2 years, oh my goodness, imagine what he is later. So they should be competitive for the Super Bowl for years to come. And again, the great thing about it is he has such good values. He cares so much about other people. He used to spend his off season tirelessly visiting children's home, a hospital, the police, the firemen, and he's got his 15 in the Mahomies, which does amazing charitable stuff. So he's not only a superstar young athlete, he's a superstar human being.
That means a lot. And you talked about earlier those 4 words, the show me the money words, right? You and Chris certainly did that for Patrick in an incredible way. Can you share a little bit about that contract and the process? I mean, he's been in the league, as you said, 2 years.
So first of all kudos to Chris, who did outstanding work. The key in the situation is, can you construct a contract that takes a player like Patrick, who's with a perfect franchise, and keep him there and keep him stable? Because his being drafted by Kansas City was a marriage made in heaven. Great organization, ownership in the Clark Hunt, great front office with Brett Veach, outstanding quarterback whisperer. She's in a great situation. You also want the team to have the ability to make sure that for Patrick, whose number one goal is more Super Bowls, that he goes to more Super Bowls. So you have a generational player, you have an enlightened front office, and it just comes together.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, Brett Veach, what a good guy. I grew up in Delaware, and a lot of my friends knew him from his University of Delaware days. And actually, it was Patrick's first season in the league, and was in Brett's office, and he showed me that helmet that was behind his desk, and that was Patrick's helmet, and this is amazing story. What's happened there?
Well, the interesting thing in terms of Brett and Chris Cabot is that when Chris was young and just starting in the field, he was doing a scouting report, and he sent it to a lot of different scouts. So he was developing relationships. And one of the first he developed was Brett Veach, and that was definitely helpful in the process, because I had represented Chiefs back to Brad Buddy, Derek Thomas, Tony Gonzalez, Nick Lowry, Deron Cherry, and had known the Hunts since they were ball boys. And Chris had this special relationship with Brett, so that always means that you're working in a very constructive way, and understanding the ultimate goal is to maximally compensate the player and have him able to go to more Super Bowls.
Absolutely. And so tell us a little bit about, we'll get to see in a week or so, as the NFL season starts, we'll get to see Tua on the field, hopefully, yes, for the Dolphins. Tell us a little about that, how that all came together.
So I had represented June Jones, who was close to the Tonga Vailoas, who was the coach at Hawaii and actually coached one of the kids. And there was another fellow who started the Polynesian Hall of Fame with him, and Jesse Sapuola, the head of the Polynesian Hall of Fame, was a former client of mine. So we had a lot of experience in that community. And then again, it was a match of values. Great family with Nalu, his father, and Diane, his mother. And Chris and I met with them, and it was just a great match. And look, representing quarterbacks, at one point I had half the starting quarterbacks as clients in the NFL. They're able to be terrific role models, do endorsements, doing all sorts of things. But at any rate, Tua, I think, is going to end up being a franchise quarterback. Now, how fast he starts, every player wants to start, but it didn't hurt Patrick Mahomes to sit behind Alex Smith, who was a generous mentor for him for some period of time. And I don't really care how quickly a player takes over the starting role. I care about what happens when he does and for the rest of his career. But he's very, very talented. And if you can look past the fact that he got an injury to who he really is, he's going to be sensational.
Yeah, you certainly have certainly one of the number one guy, and now someone else who's certainly on his way up, and you have a number of other super clients, and I wish you a lot of luck in all of that. You also, as you talked about, you're all about, trying to make this world a better place and really help others. And I think one of the interesting things that I've gotten to see, some of the things that you've done, is, how you work with young people and how you help young people, really to get into the sports business. You want to talk about some of the things that you do in that world?
So I've spoken on 85 college campuses, and when I would go, there was such a huge interest and aspiration to be involved in the sports industry somehow. So it could be working for a team, a league, a conference, an athletic department, sports branding, marketing, facilities management, PR, on-air media, talent, production in that. There's so many different ways. And so we decided to set up a sports career conference, which would have an hour on media with anchor people and writers. It would have an hour on entrepreneurship, which you're showing the entrepreneurs there. It would have an hour on charity. It would have an hour on branding and marketing. It would have, and then the ability to have a mentorship time where the young people actually got to meet the front office people or the anchors or someone else. And the whole focus is, how do I break in? How do I get into this industry? What's the right way to do a resume? What's the right way to get an internship? What's the right way to make yourself, once you get into that, irreplaceable, so that instead of being modular or fungible or replaceable, you've been able to do this. You've been able to listen, Wayne. I think the most underrated and important skill in life is listening. If you can create trust with another human being and peel back the layers of the onion and get to their values, how important they think money and security and family and every other value in the world, and understand their deepest anxieties and fears and their greatest hopes and dreams, if you can put your head and heart into the head and heart of another human being and understand how they see the world, then you can navigate your way through life gracefully. So the point is, if you're young, how can you distinguish yourself from every other of the thousands of people that want to do the same job? Could you be more clever in a resume? So I got a resume one time from that was a Sports Illustrated. And it was just Sports Illustrated, and it had their font, their type. It looked identical. But on this one, a young man was standing next to me, and we were announcing that we had hired him. And every article inside, again, cleverly done so it looked identical, was how he had enhanced our firm. And we hired him because he showed research into who we were. He showed the ability to use visual skills to pull himself out of the mix. And he already showed the skills in presentation that you would need to work in the field. Another time I was speaking down at Baylor, and Dr. Pepper Hall of Fame is in Baylor. And I was talking about the fact I liked it and everything. So shows up in the mail a Diet Dr. Pepper bottle, but in all of a sudden there's a picture of a young man and myself. And instead of being established in 1885, it's established in 1975, which is when we started our firm. Now you turn around to the back and you look at the ingredients, and it's got dedication 100%, resilience 100%, creativity 100%, loyalty 100%, all these different qualities that you look for. And we hired him. So we're trying to show people how they can break in. Now, the Agent Academy gets people up and breaks them into agent groups, and they actually have to recruit a player. Patrick Mahomes did it. Ronald Jones of Tampa Bay did it. Marvell Tell from Indianapolis did it. We've had a lot of different players and families, so they have to try to recruit them. And then half of them play general managers, half of them play player agents, and they have to negotiate a contract, and they have to get it done. And then we have them do damage control. So someone is, Baker Mayfield screws up as a collegiate. Now you have to do a press conference defending him. And then we do branding and marketing and the rest of it. So we've had to move them because of coronavirus. We've had to move them to virtual, but we've got one coming up, 2 this month. One is in Chicago, and it's a sports career conference, and then we have an agent academy coming up. So you can go to steinbergsports.com. And I'm trying to create a new generation of ethical, principled, skilled, because you go to business school or law school or sports management program, and they don't, they teach you the principles. They don't teach you practical skills. And so we're trying to give young people a jump start on their career.
That's amazing. That's so great to hear. And we'll share out your website and be able to, hopefully get some more people to come and take your course and spend time with you and learn from all the great stories and things that you've done. And really appreciate having you on our 76 Capital Leadership Series. We've had the great Leigh Steinberg on our show. And one last question I have to ask is really, if you think back to all the amazing things that you've done, and all the incredible people that you've touched and the things that you've done to truly make this world a better place, is there one moment in time that you sort of think back to and say, wow, that was the greatest thing I ever did?
Well, I'll give you a couple.
Okay.
One was Warren Moon asking me to present him and be his presenter at the Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio. And there's someone I've been 23 years with. I lived through when he played in Canada. We got him back to the NFL as the highest paid player. And, we became like brothers. And being up there, celebrating that with him, and Troy Aikman was in the same year, was really special. Being in the limo on the way back when Troy Aikman won his first Super Bowl. And then with Steve Young, he had been in the shadow of Joe Montana. And whatever he did was never good enough for some fans in San Francisco because he wasn't Joe. And he gets to the Super Bowl in Miami, throws 6 touchdown passes. They slaughter the San Diego Chargers. And I get down on the field afterwards, and he runs up to me and he says, "The monkey's off my back, the monkey's off my back." And it was sort of a special moment.
Those are incredible memories with incredible people, and it's been incredible to have spent some time with you, and really appreciate that. Love all the things that you and Chris are doing at Steinberg Sports now, what you've done in the past, and what hopefully you're going to continue to do in the future. And you have some incredible people that you're working with. So best of luck with all that. And again, thank you so much for joining our show.
It's been my pleasure, Wayne.
Well, listen, you can follow Leigh Steinberg at Leigh Steinberg all over Twitter. You can go to Steinberg Sport to find out all the things that he's doing, whether it's with his current players and roster, and also the events and different types of courses that they're teaching to bring up the next generation of sports professionals. So for Wayne Kimmel, Leigh Steinberg, thank you so much for joining our 76 Capital Leadership